Tips for making your low budget feature length film. And I came up with about 24 of them. So I'm going to go through them right now. Number one is it's better to have no crew than an unreliable crew. For our film, I found that it was actually easier to get actors than it was to find reliable crew. And it's not just a question of bring somebody onto your film. Let's say they're a film student or something, or they're saying they're really interested and they want to help you with sound or something like that. It's not just a question of like the time that it might take to teach them what they need to do and all the rules and stuff like that, but they could actually make a mistake that ends up ruining a shot that was impossible to almost get. So it's not just a question that a bad crew person can slow you down. They can actually ruin a shot, ruin a scene that you might not ever be able to capture again. So they can become a real liability. So make sure if you get crew that they're really reliable, they take instruction well. Otherwise, you're just going to end up with more problems than it's worth. Number two is it really does all come back to the story. I realize that more than ever after having finished this project, that the movie can never be better than the script. So if you could film it great, the sound could be great, the acting could be great, but if the story sucks, the movie's not going to be any good. So it really does come down to the story. So you could look at a movie like on Rotten Tomatoes, but You May Not Kiss the Bride is a movie that is 0%. And I don't know if it had a $5 million budget or something like that. And it's competently shot, but the story kind of sucks. And I don't know, some of the acting's not the greatest either. So it didn't matter how great they shot it or scheduled it. So really make sure you got a good story. 3, get your releases signed as early as possible. Absolutely get them signed before the last shooting day, because the last thing you want to do is be trying to track somebody down after the production's over, and then they're potentially giving you a hard time about something or getting hung up on a technicality or something. So I'd say get those releases signed as early as possible. Don't delay. And I also noticed it's almost better to give them all at once, because then there's kind of a peer pressure for everybody to sign it. 4 is consider designating a person just for continuity. And sometimes you may not have that luxury and it ends up being you. But that really is important, because it really takes a second set of eyes to make sure that, people are repeating their actions the way they did in the previous take, that they didn't just put on a watch, or if they picked it up with the left hand, now they're not picking it up with the right hand, that kind of stuff. Number 5 is at some point you're going to have to sit down with the script and go through and number every single scene. Get an Excel spreadsheet and put down the locations, and then the props, and then the costumes. And then you can sort by category, like locations, and then that will help you with planning your scheduling so that you can get all of your scenes done at one location and you don't forget something. And you don't necessarily need to have a shot list, but you definitely need to have a scene list of all the scenes that you need to shoot. Consider using a digital clapboard. I had a manual clapboard with that you write the take on each one, but it ended up getting messy. We found some digital app that you could use on a tablet that was a lot faster and a lot neater once we got the hang of using that. Number 7 was a big one for me, and that was there's a video on YouTube where Michael Caine teaches acting, and he talks about it, but it's really the importance of the continuity of action. So if someone's going to be doing a take again, and most good actors should know this, that they repeat their same body actions that they did in the previous take. They're not fiddling around and mixing things up. And the reason for that is that when you go to edit, if they were doing something with their left hand and now they're doing it with their right hand, when you go into editing, it's not going to match up, because they're using it. They put their hair back or something like that. So it's really important to be aware of the continuity of the action between takes, and that the actors are repeating their take in a consistent way, so that when you go to edit, it'll match up. Number 8 is what I recommend doing is getting a master shot of each scene. And it can also be kind of like a rough rehearsal. At least if everything goes wrong, you've got at least one master shot of the whole scene that you could potentially use. Whereas if you just cutting in on every shot, you never really got the bird's eye view of the whole scene playing out. So if possible, I recommend getting a master shot of the scene as the very first thing to do. Number 9, budget for more time not less time. So let's say you're planning that you could shoot the whole thing in 4 days. Add a fifth day. Plan for a fifth day. Schedule a day just for pickups for things you might have missed, because things don't always go right, and you're going to find yourself. You don't want to feel pressured, although there's always is some kind of pressure on you. You want to try to take your time and get the shots you need and get them right the first time, so you don't have to come back and reshoot something. So, but budget for more time, not less. I saw somebody shooting a short film and they had shots literally down to like 10 minutes for this one, 15 minutes for this one. And I was like, that's not going to happen. You know, I mean, they might have wrote that down on paper, but it didn't happen like that at all. I don't even think they may have had like, they planned to get 20 shots that way. And within 30 minutes, their whole schedule was screwed up because there was no way they got that first shot done in 10 minutes. I have Costco, Sam's Club as your friend. If you're on a low budget, chances are, you know, you're not going to be able to get things catered. And, you know, you can go to Costco and actually for like $75, you could feed 15 people like fairly well. Not like you're even cheaping out. You can get like rolls and croissants and big thing of cookies. Just to let them see that you got it from Costco and take the labels off. And, you know, you can actually make things really nice on a budget that way. So number 11 is the importance of casting calls and especially callbacks. So someone can come in and do a good read for you, but you need to have them come back because maybe that was just a fluke and you want to see if that's consistent. And sometimes it's good to have them come back 2 or 3 times just to weed out the flaky people. Callbacks are good. It can help you make sure that you're weeding out the people that aren't really motivated. It's like a job interview, right? You know, they're auditioning for your part, and you want to make sure you're getting actors that are reliable. And the best place to screen them out is during the casting process, not during the actual filming. This is kind of related. I kind of found this out the hard way, but it doesn't hurt to do a quick little Google search on not only your cast, but maybe your crew, just to see if anything pops up on the first 2 pages. Like maybe they find out that they've just been paroled from something, or, you know, you just don't want any distractions. So you want to make sure that the people that you're getting aren't coming in with undue baggage, and then you're going to kick yourself that you didn't do a simple Google search and you would have seen it right away. You don't need that headache later down the road. So do a quick background check on, especially I think your actors. 13, make sure everyone knows the schedule and the call times and when the scenes are shot and what to bring, and make sure they got the most current script. Hopefully one of your coordinators will be doing that for you, but it might be you. And along that same line, it would be good to set up like a private Facebook group for centralized communication. So you can communicate individually by email, but it's good to just have one central place where everybody knows to go and check. And if they want to, you know, they need a ride or whatever, they can check it there, and you're not running around emailing everybody individually, although sometimes you have to do that. 14, if a scene will carry over to another shooting day, let's say you're shooting in a kitchen and you didn't get all your shots done, and you're going to be picking up in the morning in the same kitchen, be sure to get a shot of the actors, a picture of the actors and the location before you wrap for the day, so that when you come in the morning, you can make sure you can use the picture as a visual reference and make sure everything's lining up. And hopefully if you have a person for continuity, that would be one of the things that they're keeping track of. Number 15 is when you're shooting at a location, because weather changes, lighting changes, always try to get, if you can, still a few minutes and get an establishing shot of the location before you end up wrapping for the day. Maybe get one in the morning and one at the evening. You never know when those shots can come in handy, and it may be that your editor needs an establishing shot, and the last thing you want to have to do is go back some other day and try to get it when the weather may not even be the same. 16 is if you have a professional sound person, they're probably doing this already, but you want to make sure that you're recording, taking a minute or two just to get ambiance and room tone at the location. So when you go into editing, if there's some kind of problem, there's a background noise or something, you have that background audio track to fall back on, and you can dub that in. 17, related to getting clean entrances and exits. So I think it's advisable to have people enter a scene and do their performance and then exit the scene, you know, as much as you can, because you never know in editing when those might come in handy. Like maybe there's an issue with the pacing, or maybe there's not quite the right transition between shots, and having that little extra breathing room in there, it's always better to err on the long side versus the short side. So if it's too much, the editor can cut it, but if it's not there, there's nothing to work with. So err on the long side, and if you can, get clean entrances and clean exits. 18, this was one of the biggest insights I had was whenever you're shooting in a location, reverse engineer or work the unexpected into the story. So, for example, we were shooting this story in a nursery, and it was a working business, and it was a work day for them. And so there were people out there using a weed whacker or whatever, making a lot of noise, but we really weren't in a position to go tell them to stop. So there was, in the background noise, you could hear this weed eating noise. Rather than not shoot, we just actually worked that into the story, that noise. And we did the same thing with a dog that wouldn't stop barking. We actually added a line to the story to play along with that noise. So what could have been like a liability actually seemed like it added production value because we reverse engineered it into the story. And the same thing related to our location, where they said, we had free reign of the building and we could take everything out. But because it was a working business, and at the end of the day, we have to bring everything back in. So we just left that stuff in the shot and worked it into the story versus keeping it there. Trying to get rid of it and then recreating the scene every day. Number 19 is more of an attitude, but it's just realizing that things will go wrong and be prepared for that. And so that's why I say, like number 9, budget for more time, not less, because things will absolutely go wrong. Someone's going to be late. Someone's going to get sick. Something's going to break. Something's going to happen, and it's just not going to go as smoothly as you might think it will. And so just be prepared for that. And along with that, always 20 is always have bandages and a first aid kit around. Accidents happen, and the last thing you want to do is be unprepared and someone's dripping blood all over the place. Or somebody cuts their finger and you're spending 15 minutes looking for a bandage where you could just have the stuff, fix it, and be on to the next. 21 is, I actually do recommend having rehearsals. I think that's good. And I would actually, if the actors know each other and they live close to each other, I would even encourage the actors to get together on their own time to rehearse their lines. There's nothing worse than them showing up and they're not knowing their lines, or they keep forgetting a line. 22, if the actors are struggling with their lines, you're going to have to break the scene down into smaller parts and just do one piece at a time. And I know that's frustrating, and I don't like to shoot that way, but sometimes that's what you have to do. And unfortunately, when you're working with struggling actors, amateur actors, they have other problems in their lives. They got other things going on. They're running from casting call to casting call, and they just, maybe they didn't have time to put in. And I know some people say it's not professional, but when they're working for free, how much can you strong arm them? I don't think you can strong arm them that much when they're performing for free. But if they are struggling, be prepared for that you're going to have to break the scene down into smaller parts. 23 is to consider the use of sound on the front end of the story and not the back end. Too often sound is like an afterthought and people come in after the fact. But in the front end, when you're writing your story or looking at your story, think of how sound could play a part and be another character in the story. Sound of weather, a clock ticking, sirens in the distance, wind howling, dogs barking, you name it. How can sound play a part in your film, and how can you use it creatively? So sound is so important. And that comes up to my last pointer or tip. When you finally get down and you got the whole movie on a kind of a final cut, what I would do is I would render out an audio track of the whole film and just sit back in your car and listen to the whole audio track of the movie. And that way you can focus just exclusively on the sound and make sure your levels are right and that there's no distracting background noises and that the soundtrack is as good as it can possibly be. I can tell within 30 seconds of watching a film whether I consider it a professional production or amateur production just based on the sound quality alone. So really go that extra mile, and you should not only just listen to the audio, you should watch your movie just from a visual standpoint, turning off the sound. But then on the other side, you should just listen to the sound and not see any visuals so that you can have the best quality audio soundscape that you possibly can. Of all of this, I would say really make sure you've got a story worth telling, because no matter how much effort you put into your movie, if the story is no good, there's no way the movie's going to be good. There's no way. So it always does literally come back to the story and the story that you're trying to tell. So find a story out there that really makes you feel something and really inspires you, and make sure it's a really great story. Get other people's to read it and see what they think. And if everybody agrees that this is a dynamite story, then that's the very, very first step, because the movie will be a reflection of that script. And if the script's no good, it doesn't matter how well shot the movie is, how great the sound is, how good the acting is. If the story sucks, the movie's gonna suck. So anyway, I hope you found this helpful. I know the last thing I would say is I'll say this. I honestly feel it's better to make a bad movie than no movie at all. And I know there's a lot of bad movies out there already. When you put yourself out there and you go through the entire process, you'll learn all these things and more. And then when you go to make your next movie, it should be even better than that, even better than the first one. And each movie should be better than the one that preceded it, hopefully. But everybody's going to make their Ishtar at some point. Maybe your first one is your Ishtar. And then from there, it only gets better. So anyway, I hope you found this helpful. And thanks so much for listening and have a great day.